Take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Take your seats, please.
You get everything?
Okay, the Delta Stewardship Council is called to order. Ladies, if you would note Ms. Gray's participation, I think before we ran out of here at 2 minutes after 9, she was not yet here, but she arrived shortly thereafter. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether there's enough, but there's a bag of candy from Kobasic Candy Store down the street, and we have saved some of it from Patrick Johnston, who would consume all of it if given the opportunity. And some of the folks and staff have already gotten one, so take one and pass it on. There's a card inside from the store. Let's see. Dr. Goodwin needs one. He needs sweetening. Okay. All right. Members, if you would be good enough, please, to go to file item number 17. File item number 17. Ms. Messer. Good morning.
Okay. Ooh, that is on. All right. Well, good morning, and thank you. I am going to run us through quite a few items under this particular agenda item this morning having to do with the covered actions regulatory process. And I thought I'd start out with just a quick sort of summary of why we as staff thought it was important to pull this package of information together and to present it now at this council meeting. A lot of the information, I know all of you and many of the folks sitting behind me know inside and out, but we also do have some new information that we wanted to share with the council. So the reasons why we thought we'd bring this report to you guys today have to do with the fact that, as you know, the Delta Plan was adopted in May. The regulations became effective September 1st, and we are live. And I'm looking around seeing some confusion. Should I stop for a second, or we're all good in terms of... I just want to make sure that... And there are quite a few attachments, so I'll try to walk us through those. And I didn't put nearly as much paper in as I could have in hopes of simplifying.
My confusion is because my binder snapped open and paper scattered all over the front of the table, and I'm attempting to organize that. So ignoring me,
okay.
Are there new distributions of material that you want to call our attention to for today?
No.
Okay, so everything that you're going to talk about is in the binder.
Yes, correct. Okay, so as I was saying, we are live. We are open for business in terms of the covered actions regulatory process. And so in addition to providing some information to the council members today, we as staff thought this was a great venue to also get the word out a little further about the fact that we are available for early consultation, to talk to local and state agency folks about the covered actions regulatory process. We have in fact started to conduct, we've had one early consultation so far, and we have also been offering some training workshops, which I'll talk about in a little more detail in a minute. But again, just to let everybody know that we are here, the doors are open, and please come and talk to us about potential covered actions or your questions about the process. We also have a new tool that the staff have developed in the form of an online system of forms to help agency folks file their certifications of consistency online, as well as for filing appeals if individuals or agencies choose to do that. So I'll walk us through that process a little bit too. And then we thought, since we have a new council member, it might be a good time to go through some of this information, revisit some of the procedures that were adopted now almost 3 years ago, and just touch upon those and be available to answer any questions he may have.
Okay.
And lastly, we have one action item that's part of this agenda item, which is that staff is recommending amending the delegation of authority for the executive officer to include 2 new delegations. And I'm thinking we'll wrap this item up with that action item. We'll save that for last. So going through the actual staff report, I have quite a bit of background information, which I'm thinking I don't need to run through. It's information that we provide in our training materials, at presentations, and I wanted to bring it into this staff report just for consistency as to how we're conveying information about covered actions. It's out of the Delta Plan, it's out of statute, but it's packaged in a way that we hope is easy to get through and understandable no matter what audience we're talking to. So what I might do then is jump to just a quick revisit of the administrative procedures governing appeals.
This is attachment 3 to item number 17.
Yes, and maybe actually one thing I might do just in terms of background is attachments 1 and 2.
These are the charts?
These are the charts, the flow charts. And we've developed these to help people just have a quick snapshot of both the certification of consistency process as well as the appeals process. So it talks about who's responsible for which step, timelines.
Just a suggestion, don't change anything you're doing, but my recommendation is that you have to always start with the statute, which establish covered actions, define covered actions, and set up the process and procedure for covered actions. And if calls to me are any indication, people think that we made it up in whole cloth in our Delta plan, when in fact the Delta plan took the statutory language, amplified it somewhat, and set up processes to do it. But the statute is what governs, and they seemed surprised. A few calls seemed surprised there was even a statute saying anything.
Yes, and we've definitely had similar type questions in the training workshops we've provided. So we have that definitely as part of sort of the narrative background information, but we will definitely add it into these flow charts as a starting point. So just to have the message repeated in multiple places. Okay, so attachment number 3 is actually Appendix D of it in the final Delta plan. It is the administrative procedures governing appeals. The council adopted this in September of 2010. It governs how the council considers appeals, and I will acknowledge at this point that there are 2 parts to this, to the appeals procedures. One is governs the council and how they review appeals related to certificates of consistency with the Delta plan. And the second part is governs how the council reviews and deals with appeals on BDCP. I will focus on the first part today. I understand that at some point in time we may bring the second part back for discussion, but I really just wanted to focus in on covered actions and consistency with Delta Plan today. The administrative procedures themselves provide a lot of detailed information and guidance and guidelines for a whole host of facets of the appeal process, as well as the certification process in terms of early consultation guidelines, the requirement that the council will develop a checklist to help agencies during their certification and consistency determination process. It lists all of the timelines that we needed to know about from beginning to end in terms of once a consistency determination is filed, then the appeal after 30 calendar days, within 30 calendar days, an appeal can be filed, and then from there forward in terms of even when the council, the time frame for hearing the appeal and for making a decision on the appeal itself. The procedures also include information and requirements about the sort of the information that must be included in an appeal. There's sort of these mini checklists in here that staff will use once we receive an appeal to go through and make sure all the information has been submitted. It lists, discuss the council's ability to require additional information not only from the appellant but also from the local or state agency that's filed a consistency certification, and if that is appealed, must lodge their administrative record with us. It talks about who may file an appeal, and that comes right out of the statute. It has some discussion about ex parte contact restrictions that kick in once an appeal is filed. And last, it talks a bit about the council's ability to consolidate appeals if there's multiple appeals on any one certification of consistency. So the staff are not today recommending any changes to these procedures. It was just a revisiting and a walkthrough. And I think it sets up fairly nicely the online form system that we've developed. We've taken all of this information and kind of turned it into this process that provides just kind of a nice overview for anybody who's engaging in the covered actions regulatory process. So unless there's questions or we want to discuss any items, I was going to jump into our online form system.
Well, let me make two other notations. In the appellate process we adopted in September 2010, there's also Part 2, which discusses the role the council's given statutorily to deal with other plans. For example, specific mention in the statute of the Economic Sustainability Plan by the Delta Protection Commission, and we exercise that. Comments on local and regional planning documents that may not themselves be covered actions,
right,
but allow the council or staff on appropriate circumstances to comment. I think that's worth noting. And then third, the last part of this process is the encouragement of early consultations, whether on covered actions or much of anything else, in the hopes that early conversation and discussion could resolve potential problems rather than interested parties waiting till the last minute to find out we might have them. So we have a general encouragement. I didn't want to leave that out of the discussion.
Thank you.
Now the forms.
Now the forms.
And this is attachment 4 to start with, right?
Yes.
Okay. Members, file 17, attachment 4.
Okay. So as I mentioned, and I'll just reiterate, that one of the reasons why we developed this tool was to provide a means by which local and state agencies would have a very organized and comprehensive and transparent means of filing their certifications of consistency. And it's also a system, as you will see as we walk through, that provides real-time notification not only to council staff that a certification's been filed, but any change in status that occurs in the system, whether an appeal is filed, whether somebody withdraws a certification, we are notified in real time, which allows us to notify our executive officer and the council as activities are occurring in the system. We also, it's on our website, and the public who are looking at this will notice the changes as they happen.
And Ms. Messer, these are the copies of the current website available for public review?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so maybe I'll take a step back and just kind of walk us page by page very quickly. So the first page in this attachment is the home page. So if you go into our website, you go to the Delta Plan tab, all the sub-tabs come up, you click on covered actions. The first thing you're going to see is sort of this introductory information on covered actions. At the bottom, and I know it's hard to read, but the colored accordion tabs, as I'm told they're called, cover the different elements. So there is covered action determination, early consultation, certification of consistency, and the appeals process. So this allows folks to walk through each of these elements. So the first place we would encourage people to start is the brown tab, which is the next page, the covered action determination. And again, some introductory information discussing who should file the determination, that if indeed they do not file one, that the determination must be reasonable, made in good faith, consistent with Delta Reform Act and the relevant provisions of the Delta Plan. At the very bottom of this, there's a blue, and we put a red arrow here, a blue link that takes you to the covered actions checklist, which I mentioned comes out of the appeal procedures. And that's the next 3 pages of your attachment. And this has been in the works for quite a while. I actually remember having some discussions about this even before I came to the council in a series of workshops the council did. This is the final product. It walks potential local and state agency folks that are trying to determine whether they have a covered action or not, walks them through the exemptions, walks them through the screening criteria for covered actions, yes, no, tells them when they need to move forward, walks them through all of the Delta Plan policies, and in the end offers them some additional guidelines and tips regarding this covered actions process. What this does, and It does and doesn't do. We do not collect this information in our database. This is purely for the local and state agency folks to use. We encourage them as they're going through this. That's a good time to have early consultation with the council staff if they've got any questions about this. But the system allows them to save this into their own computer files. So in the future, if they decide they don't have a covered action, but they may be challenged, it gives them one more file, a document in their file to go back to and review as to why they made that determination.
By the way, all these documents, we've seen earlier versions of
Yes.
these many times in the month, but these are the final version you've
These are
adopted
the
after
final.
all the meetings and the comments and the talk.
Right, and waiting for the regulations to become
right.
effective so we'd have the final language. So
Right.
this is what's up on the website right now and the final version. The next page with the green header is just some information about early consultation, provides our phone number. We have a special email address that comes to a handful of council staff, and so if local or state agencies are thinking about this, they can get a hold of us and we can set a time up to talk with them and just keep that conversation going and get the meeting set up very quickly.
Now, I don't notice anyone named there on the website, so presumptively your home telephone number and your personal email is available to answer all these questions
You
on a
bet.
24-hour basis? Is
Yep.
that-
Oh, yeah. Actually, I think that's Kayvon
it's
and my
Kayvon.
staff.
Mr. Sam
Yeah, I
sitting
think
back
he
there.
volunteered for that.
Yeah,
so.
right. I'm sure he did. Well, but the point is, tell us some of the people who will be doing just the review, not the details of the thing, so we can understand within the office, within the council staff, who are the people that you've picked and designated to do these reviews.
Well, actually, so it's a combination of folks in the planning staff, for example. So Kayvon, Samsan, Jessica Davenport, Yu Chen now will be part of that group. So
Right.
from the policy side, they're my experts. They're kind of actually the second in line when we get an inquiry. We're also teamed up with the science program. So, we have Lauren helps us out, Sam, Lindsay, in terms of the adaptive management plan portion of that, best available science. So depending on the subject and of the activity, when that comes in, we take a look at who we need to pull from our staff, and we create teams for the early consultation and any review that needs to happen. We also have Jessica O'Connor, who is our guru on these forms and the whole online system. She's kind of the first line.
Is guru gender neutral?
I'm going to say yes,
Yeah.
but... and she was actually going to come in today, but she has the day off, so I told her I'd try and cover this as best I could. But she is the mastermind behind much of this. And so if the questions come in really about process in these forms, they're directed to her. If it moves into early consultation, it comes to the team we pull together. And then obviously we would be working with our chief counsel as well. So,
Right. Okay.
And then just moving quickly through the rest of the pages here, the certification of consistency, again, some intro language. The link down below actually takes you to the form, which I regret not including in your package, but I was trying not to overload you with more paper. I can certainly give you a copy if anybody's interested. We have a great little package that has instructions in the form that we use in our training workshops. But the link below takes the agency staff right to the form, and they can start to work through that. And then the last page with the red header here, or the last of the accordion tabs, I should say, is about the appeals process. And also, same thing, walks them through introductory language, directs them to the administrative procedures, and then at the very bottom is a link that takes them right to the form that they would need to fill out. So what I'm going to do is have you skip to the very last page, because I think I can just cover both of these in one. This, right now we do not have any consistency certifications filed, so I included our test page in here. So what will happen, this is the table and the information I alluded to early that the public as well as staff will see as activity occurs.
Can I make a suggestion on this form? The phrase, "This site contains test values only, this is not a production site," I'm sure has meaning to information technology technicians,
not to me.
but is not perhaps adequate for general understanding.
Okay. We will look into rewording that.
Yes,
So these are all test certifications that we've pulled together just for our training purposes. And essentially, anytime somebody files a certification, this table gets updated. And under the covered action title, if you click on the title, it takes you to a whole profile page. So you have all the information you would need about the file. Agency information, project information, supporting documentation. And this also will note when an appeal has been filed, when the 30-day public review period has ended. So if it's not been appealed, that's that for that particular covered action. And it also will note if for some reason the agency withdrew that certification and maybe they were going to refile later. So this I believe, will be a very handy tool not only for the public, the stakeholders, but for staff and council members as well. It'll allow us to report very rapidly to you as changes occur in the...
Let me ask a question. We have the statute sets up various time periods for submitting or reviewing covered actions, time periods for appeal, and so on. I am assuming that while we're waiting to see whether a filing is appealed, that we will not just wait for the appeal to be filed and then decide to look at the form. What do you contemplate our staff doing prior to the receipt of the filing so we can satisfy ourselves, I assume, that at least the minimum requirement available of information to be submitted is submitted?
So in terms of the certification of consistency, well, I think the way we have it set up right now is early consultation, and then any other subsequent discussions we have with the agency is where we will walk them through the requirements. Mm-hmm. But what you don't have in front of you is the form, and we have built into that form, you must have all the...
Must provide it information.
Yeah, or else you can't...
I think you were wise not to include the form, but we've gone over that a number of times before. But the staff, anyway, it's fair to say that the staff will be doing a kind of a preliminary evaluation of the submission of the information to determine if the information at least covers all the bases that are required or not.
Right now, other than early consultation and whatever discussions the agency chooses to have with us, we don't have built into here a review. The agency will go into the system, they'll get through it, it won't let them complete the form until they have all the requirements. They hit the submission button and it goes live. So just in terms, unless I'm not understanding the question, it's different for the appeals side where we actually have the entity would submit the appeal. We say we receive it, but then staff actually have a small window of time to review that to make sure all the requirements are there, and then we hit the button that files it. So it's a little bit different in terms of not having a built-in short time frame or mechanism for staff to review the certifications of consistency. Does that answer your question?
I'm thinking about issues that jump out at people. So, for example, somebody submitting a proposal, I'll just make this up, to position a rendering plant of 1 million acre feet right next door to Pat Johnston's house. Is that a flag that might conceivably be noticed by anyone prior to the receipt of an appeal?
Yes, because even before the consistency certification, I'm imagining they would have to do CEQA process.
Oh, I'm sure they would. Yeah.
So we are tracking all of that ahead of even this effort. So
that's fine.
I apologize for not understanding your question.
Thanks for offering to upgrade my neighborhood.
We're on your side. Don't worry. We'll help you out. Okay. Let me see. I think, unless there's any other questions about the forms themselves, I just wanted to touch upon some training sessions that we've been having and are planned for the future.
And there's a summary in the staff memo on page
5.
Let me get back to it all.
So page 5, and it spills over
right.
a little to page 6.
Yeah, and the cover staff memo members, page 5, indicates the dates of the meeting. And I guess all of them, at least this first stage, has been completed, but you have no dates, but identified locations for future briefings, right?
Correct. And the only change I would make to that, and it came after the staff report was complete, is the San Joaquin County and neighboring cities. We have a date of November 8th will be the workshop for that group, and we'll have that in Stockton at, and I forget the name of the building, it's the really nice building at the airport. It's a...
The Cabral.
That's what we had our scoping meeting out there one foggy evening. Yeah.
Very foggy.
Very foggy, yes.
Ours will be from 1 to
Airport
3 in the
was closed.
afternoon, so yeah, hopefully we won't hit
Yeah.
fog. But we have a date for that one. The rest of them we've made outreach.
Just a suggestion, as you establish dates and locations for these meetings, I think it'd be a good idea to, I know you'll flag it on the website as a public meeting, but just alert the council members, particularly those who are near the region, because
Yeah.
they ought to be aware of meetings coming up.
Okay, absolutely.
Yes, Supervisor.
It appears that you've kind of got this all set to operate online. Can we assume that we are better prepared than certain national healthcare websites? The reason I ask is when you come to say Stockton, there are going to be folks there, and they're going to come with kind of specific issues. Is this or is this not covered action? So have we kind of run modeling, or have you sat and said, if they ask this question, so we don't go, we're going to have to get back to you on that, or we don't have that info. I mean, because if you have a training meeting, you'd want to have some examples that could say, we're pretty sure this is or this is not. And you'd want, because a lot of these folks are out there are just, because they don't understand it, and they're just scared. It's change, it's different, it's an additional hoop to jump through. And if you have the meeting, you want them to be as successful as possible and as informative as possible, and hopefully as the least contentious, and you don't want to get into the weeds and have everybody yelling and screaming.
I agree. That would
We just
that would
want
not be
all
the
get
outcome
along,
I would hope for.
just-
But
the immortal word.
The immortal word.
But just to quickly address that, we have, in the 6 training sessions we've done so far, what we've been trying to do is tailor each one a little bit. Ahead of time, we kind of think through what are going to be some examples of projects or concerns, and try to focus in on those, and kind of do our homework a little bit ahead. The training material, it pretty much takes up the full 2 hours we book for this, but what we've been doing is allowing time at the end so people can ask specific questions, or just, as they come up during the training session.
One suggestion. It's very important to take copies of the statutory language which establishes the covered action process with you, because most people won't believe that there is any.
Yeah.
And you can say it all you want, but until you hand them a copy of the code section, it's not in play. And since that is really the basic structure, the standards you use, the exemptions from covered actions are contained there, it's probably the most important starting point. I'd urge you to make those available on the training sessions.
Yep, that's a very good idea. We will do that.
Randy.
Cindy, I wasn't clear. On the bottom of page 5 and top of page 6, a list of participants. Are those agencies that have participated in previous workshops, or are they participants in the workshops, or what do you mean by participants?
Workshop. These are all the agencies that have participated in the workshops. The way we set it up, we had DWR, we did 2 for them, 1 for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and 1 for the Delta Protection Commission, where we just kind of focused in. And then we did 2 where we opened it up to all local and state agencies. And so it was whoever, and we put the invitation out far and wide, and these were the folks that came in to attend the workshops. Does that
answers my question.
okay? All right.
Questions on this memo?
Yes.
Questions on the memo? Okay. What remains, Ms. Messer?
Okay, I just have three more things, and then
Three
we're
more
done.
things.
I wanted to, in the staff report itself on page 6, just touch quickly on D and E, and these are...
This is the proposed change you're suggesting.
No, that's the last. That's number 3. So just to draw some attention to these two other items, which have to do with process. One, in the case that a council member decides they wish to file an appeal.
Mm-hmm.
We've been having some discussion internally about how would staff support that, and so we did a little quick write-up on that, and I just wanted to bring it up today that obviously staff are more than willing to assist and help in terms of gathering information, guidance through the form. We will help with everything except hitting the submit button, is my understanding of that process.
Okay.
And then the process for council hearings on appeals. And this, again, is focused on the consistency determination with Delta Plan. And just, again, to remind everybody about the focus of the hearing, it's on the administrative record, it's on the consistency certification. Our vision as staff is that given the 60-day timeline between the filing of the appeal and the council hearing it, and then the additional 60 days for decision, fits into regularly scheduled council meetings. So we would envision, in a perfect world, of course, that we would have the item on the agenda, regularly scheduled council meeting, depending on the scope of the project, the complexity. Sometimes it would be one agenda item in a regular meeting. Sometimes it might be a little bit longer. So again, just a reminder, pulling that out of the procedures and anticipating at some point we will go through this process.
Mr.
So-
Fiorina.
I think it's very generous of you to offer staff to help a particular council member fill out a form. However, I have a concern. I reserve the right to retreat from this concern at any moment. But
Yeah.
it would seem to me that this may not be appropriate for an individual council member to ask of staff time devoted to something like this. If it were a vote of the council and there was an action taken to file, it seems to me then it would be appropriate for staff to do it. But I'm having a little problem with just anybody from the council asking staff to do thus and so. So I register that concern.
Let me ask a question. Are you contemplating the provision of staff time or information differently than what you would provide to an inquiry to any interested member of the public who might wish to file an appeal?
Yes, I think it would be, I say that, it would be a little bit more work on staff's part, but at the same time, we would need to prepare information for the council meeting, hearing that the appeal would be heard. So we would be pulling that information together regardless, but that's once the appeal is filed, so.
Mr.
Hello.
Stevens.
Hello.
Hello. So the concern is duly noted, and we had taken a look at that, and I think that the analog is something that we do right now as staff, professional staff, serving a multi-member board, in that various board members from time to time ask in their individual but their official capacities for help on various projects that haven't been voted upon by the entire board, and some of which the intention is not to bring it before the entire board. So this would be in that same capacity. I think Cindy's point is the one that we want to reiterate, and this is subject to resource availability and time. So I think what the provision in law, starting with the statute, it authorizes any person to file an appeal, and we went through the debate and the deliberations when we passed the appeals procedures as to what that meant. Mm-hmm. The council ended up expanding, not expanding, but clarifying that also could mean the executive officer filing an appeal or any one of the board members filing an appeal if it's in their official capacity. then I think it's appropriate, given time and resource availability, to provide the kind of support that Cindy's talking about. And again, this happens now, and this is not something that's out of the ordinary with regard to professional staff servicing multi-member boards.
I would argue that this isn't a part of carrying out our normal duties, such as preparing for a PowerPoint presentation or requiring research for addressing a particular issue. This is different. And I would suggest that the policy limits staff activity to whatever they would provide to any other person filing an appeal. And that if it rises to the level of a concern that results in a vote in favor of pursuing an appeal, then staff ought to be enabled to do everything that's necessary, including pushing the button. But I don't, as an individual council member, I don't want staff doing any more for me than they would do for anybody else.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to kind of clarify what you said or make sure I understand it. Are you saying that the appeal would be filed if that happens as an individual, not a council member? Is that what you're saying? If you would give the same resources to anyone that you would give to the public that you would give to a council member? So not in the role as a council member? Is that
Actually,
what it is, Chris?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. So you're reiterating what Randy just,
Yeah, because Randy
yes.
and I agree, Randy, council members, but and we're individuals also, so are you saying in the role as an individual, or are you saying in the role as a council member?
I'm going to say it's,
Yeah, I think the procedure that you adopted back in 2010 says any person, including any council member. So we didn't say any council member acting in their private capacity as an individual citizen. So I think it was envisioned that that any individual council member in their official capacity, and I think that's where we were trying to offer staff assistance. But again, this is your procedure, and we're your staff. So this is what we were thinking. If you have a different view, then
Supervisor Rustaller.
I agree with both the previous speakers. I think what's good for the public's good for us, and if we want to, if we feel strongly about this and feel we have grounds to file that appeal, then we should be able to push buttons on a computer like some poor person in the public.
yes. And I think much like the public and anybody coming to us saying, hey, just help us figure out this system you have, and I'm looking at this checklist and your procedures, we would definitely have that dialogue with anybody who wanted to have that from the public, council members. So more of that guidance, answering the questions, that would be, in my mind, the same level of service we'd offer to anybody.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Johnston.
Can I finish my comment before you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
I just wanted to make sure, my position is that if a person on this council would like to file an appeal as an individual, that's okay. We get the same, response or resource. But as a council member, I don't support that. I don't think it should be in the role as a council member, because we're a part of a body, and the body has voted to do certain things. So I wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Mr. Johnston.
So, do you want to delete then in D the last three sentences?
You mean, are you talking about the staff memo?
Yeah.
Where's that?
we could, or I could reword it so that it lays out that we would offer an equivalent level of assistance to council members as we would anybody coming to us to file an appeal. So I could reword it to that effect.
Okay, I think any objection by council members Now, this, of course, is modifying not the appellate rules, but the staff discussion of it.
Right.
I think we ought to leave to Ms. Messer and Mr. Stevens to check the precise language they use. A suggestion is perhaps deleting those sentences, although I think I'll probably get a staff saying, well, wait a minute, I want to make clear that we're not going to submit the appeal on your behalf, so you might want to keep that last sentence in, I don't know. But let's, any objection to that? Okay, you have 6 of us in support of modification of that language along the lines suggested by Mr. Fiorini and others.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
All right. E.
E. I think we're done with E unless there's any
Okay,
questions.
then go to the delegation of authority suggestion so we can understand that, please.
Yes. So attachment number 5 is actually the proposed amended delegation of authority for the executive officer.
With the proposed new language in italics, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes. So number 11 and 12 are the new proposed delegations. And essentially, number 11 would authorize the executive officer to, make sure I got these in the right order, dismiss certain appeals already contemplated in paragraphs 9 and 13B of the administrative procedures, subject to prior consultation with the chief counsel, the chair, and the vice chair.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 12 would condition the executive officer's existing authority to file appeals, as in paragraph 5 of the administrative procedures, to the same prior consultation with chief counsel, chair, and vice chair.
Okay.
So these are the 2 new delegations that staff is recommending.
Now, a recollection. We held our first meeting of the council in April of 2010, and there was a resolution, or I forget what it was called, but a delegation of general authority to the executive director. That is the document that appears as number 5.
Yes.
The proposed changes are in italics on the bottom.
Correct.
Okay.